everyone, and welcome to another custom figure showcase. And today we are another edition of my The Third Doctors series, and this is the third Doctor as he appeared in the Mutants. Now, originally this was going to be well, there's a bit of an interesting story behind this custom actually, but originally this was going to be a Terror of the Autons third Doctor. And the eagle-eyed amongst you will actually recognise this as my original, before they officially released it, three Doctors, third Doctor, which I painted the jacket, and originally I had it as the three Doctors, and then I repainted it into Invasion of the Dinosaurs, and then they released the Invasion of the Dinosaurs variant, so I repainted it back to the Three Doctors variant, which I had for a long time. It didn't appear on my channel until very recent. Well, not that recently, but it did appear on my channel more recently than I made it. But I had it in my collection for a very long time, and then I decided to show it, and it was either just before or just after I showed it that they released the 13 Doctors box set version of the third Doctor from the Three Doctors. So obviously I didn't, I then, sort of looked at it and thought, well, there's a re-release now. What can I make of this? And obviously I don't have the actual release, but I didn't want to have. I thought if I'm ever going to get the official release, then I'll buy it. In which case I've got this spare. So I was thinking, well, what shall I do with this one? And I decided to basically cut off the bow tie. And then underneath the necktie, I'll come back to the necktie in a minute, underneath the necktie I sculpted on a bit more of the ruff, but as if he wasn't wearing a bow tie. And I then added on the cloak, and it became a Terror of the Autons third Doctor. And I was pretty pleased with it at the time. But it was one of those figures that I sort of kept looking at it every now and again, and the more I looked at it, the more just something about it didn't feel right. I didn't like it, and it started to sort of, I don't know what the opposite of grow on me is. I didn't want to get rid of it, but the more I looked at it, the more I thought it just doesn't look, it's not what I want. I don't want that in my collection in a way. And originally I had planned to show it as part of this series, but then I was going through my collection, and I think I was having a random day where I just decided to I picked a couple of random numbers, I think, and I picked 3, so I thought I'll watch a third Doctor classic story, and then I can't remember what the other number I picked was, but I landed on the Mutants, the third Doctor story, the Mutants, and in watching that I realised that I could turn my Terror of the Autons figure into a Mutants variant really easily just by making a couple of small changes, i.e. adding on a little necktie and adding on some gloves, and I've also added on some boots, and I'll come back to that in a second. But I realised that it looked so much better this way, and it looks so good as well, because I looked at this again and I thought, this is another perfect example of a variant that Character Options, Underground Toys, whoever, could make, because it would be so simple, because the only new part they would have to make, and I appreciate that it's not just as simple as making a new part, but if they ever decided to just sort of look at existing things they've got and what small additions make, if they literally just made a new centerpiece, obviously, because on the third Doctor figures the bow tie and the shirt piece is a separate piece from the rest of the body. If they just remade a version of that with this little tie on it and put it in, and then they put it together like this, you've then got a brand new variant of the third Doctor that they've not yet released, and it would be such a brilliant idea. And I was really pleased that it came out as well as I'd hoped it has, because it just looked so much better, and it looks so much nicer on my shelf than just my Terror of the Autons third Doctor, because the Terror of the Autons third Doctor, it looked alright, but it was very nondescript. There wasn't anything particularly stand out about it. And literally, just by making the addition of the tie, it makes it stand out so much more on a shelf, because you look at it and you think, oh, it's a Third Doctor, and you thought, oh, I've not seen that, you know, that before, that kind of tie style, and it worked so well. And as I said, the one thing that some people notice is the boots, and I'm sure some people are going to say, well, hang on a minute, he didn't wear boots in the Mutants, he wore normal shoes. And, well, the question to that is yes and no, because I actually, in rewatching the Mutants, I noticed a very interesting continuity error, which occurs at the end of episode 2 and goes through the rest of the episodes, and then it changes back, I think, somewhere near the last episode. But basically, at the end of episode 2, and I'm going to try and put some video up on screen to show this. At the end of episode 2, we see the Third Doctor, leaving a room, and he is wearing just normal shoes. And then we literally see him just a few seconds later. There's been no interim where he might have gone back to the TARDIS or anything. Literally a few seconds later, he appears in a corridor and he's wearing boots. And then if you look ahead to episode 3, because episode 2 literally ends on a cliffhanger of him in the corridor, but then you look at episode 3, you can see that he's wearing the boots again. And then later on, in another episode, again a bit later, he switches back to the shoes again. For some reason, this continuity error somehow crept in. I'm not quite sure what it was. But it really sort of jumped out at me, because I thought, one of the things that I tend to do when I make the Third Doctors is I often end up buying the 12 Doctors version of the 13th Doctor that came with, I think it was the one with the green jacket, and it came with the cloak and the boots. And the majority of my Third Doctor customs all have normal shoes, which means I have a whole spare tray of boots, that's Third Doctor boots that I've not used. I'm using them on a couple of other customs. Now I've gone through them, I've thought of a couple of other things I can use them for, but I've never done them on a Third Doctor custom, and so I thought this would be a perfect time to actually use them on a Third Doctor custom, because whilst it's not how most people would remember him in the episode, I thought it was a fun way of taking note of a very interesting little continuity error from the Mutants to have him in his boots. But in a way, you know, it works, and I like it. I like how it works, because again, it's something nice and different to the Third Doctor that you know, that we don't sort of really see that much on figures. That we've seen him, you know, a lot of the figures released of him, they have him in his normal shoes, and there have been plenty of releases in the boots, but I've never done it as a custom figure with boots, so I thought, you know, why not? It was the perfect time to do it, and I figured let's just do it, you know. But yes, that is my the Mutants Third Doctor, and brings to a close another entry in my The Third Doctors custom series. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, favorite, subscribe, share, it really helps me out a lot, and be sure to check out the description below for a link to my Patreon. There is an exclusive webcomic and rewards for people who support it, and the funding generated by my Patreon helps me fund future videos. I salute you all, and I will see you with another video very soon.